In May 2023, I journeyed up from my home near Southampton to Scotland to spend 3 weeks, initially walking the West Highland Way and then going to the Outer Hebrides, where I decided to walk some of the Hebridean Way. I booked my train fare from Southampton to Glasgow very early, in actual fact in January, and this meant that a single cost me only £28, which I was very pleased about. After spending the night in Glasgow, I got the train from Glasgow to Milngay, from where I started the West Highland Way. Well, I'm hoping to have a relatively easy walk for the West Highland Way. I haven't given myself too long sections. So the first section to Drummond is about 12.5 miles. And then section 2, I'm either going to stay in Salochy or I've got a permit for the Lochindeen, or whatever you say, just before Roadennan, and then it's the long section past Inversnaid, which I think is going to be the longest bit of the whole route. And if I get to the end of the West Highland Way, which I hope I will do, I've got 3 days in Oban, and then off to the Outer Hebrides, and ideally doing the Hebridean Way all the way up to Stornoway. It's not overly warm today, but actually it's really good walking weather. Forecast is for no rain today, possibly a bit of rain tomorrow, but we'll see how we go. So just approaching the outskirts of Milngay, and walking's easy so far. So this is Scroggy Hill. Quite a few people on the walk today. 1 or 2 larger groups, but not bad otherwise. Quite a few cyclists. Craiggallion Loch. So quite a change in scenery here. Done about 4.5 miles so far. Big hill you can see there is Dumgoich, and then past at Killearn, and then some much higher hills in the background. Quite windy today, but still sunny, rather nice. Just stopped for coffee at the Beech Tree Inn, a much needed bit of refreshment, and there we are. Drummond is 5 miles to go. So this is Gartness, small waterfall there. Nice view from the bridge, and a little hamlet there, and over the other side of the bridge rather beautiful. The 12 or so miles from Milngay to Drummond campsite is a pleasant walk and a good introduction to the West Highland Way. The campsite at Drummond is highly recommended. It's about a mile's walk from the campsite to the small village, where you can get a decent meal in a couple of pubs, and there's also a shop where you can also stock up on provisions if you want to. And it's a nice walk at the end of a relatively easy first day on the West Highland Way. Well, morning all. It's 8:30 on day 2. Just stayed at Drummond campsite, which was perfectly alright. Very windy today, pretty grey, quite cold actually. Had some rain overnight, but luckily it stopped just as I was packing the tent away. I pitched the tent right down to the ground because of the high wind, and as a result quite a lot of condensation. Not a very good pitch, I have to say, but I'm sure I'll get better as the journey goes on. Went into Drummond last night, had a meal at the Drummond Inn, which is very pleasant, a nice point. It's about 1.5 miles back to the campsite. Got a 15-mile walk today or so up Conic Hill, and then I've booked at Solochi, but I've also got a permit for the, I'm not sure about the pronunciation, Lochandruin, and I'm hoping to stay there because it's closer to where I then, and that means day 3, which has got a tricky bit. It should be less arduous. So, just down from the campsite, we've got this little passageway, a tiny stream, and off we go. Conic Hill seems shrouded in cloud today, so quite whether we'll see anything from the top or not, I don't know, but there we are. Seem quite strong today, feet are hurting very slightly, but nothing new, and looking forward to the day. This is the Garadaban forest. A little bit of an uphill to get here. Very light, well, not even rain, faint drizzle. Looks like a managed forest. This is the approach to Conic Hill. It was a very windy day, but as I approached Conic Hill, it was still shrouded in cloud, and it was difficult to see the top of the hill. It's quite a scramble up Conic Hill, but it's nothing too hard. As I climbed up, the clouds started to dissipate, and the view from the top of Conic Hill is really spectacular, looking out all over Loch Lomond. I actually found the descent from Conic Hill more taxing than the climb. It's hard on the knees, and taking hiking poles really helps. Also, part of the path is currently closed, so you have to do a small detour, which took me slightly off course. Loch Lomond. Just stopped for a coffee at Cashel campsite. Got about 4 miles to go. Solochi campsite looked a good place to stay. There were clear pitches, and you can buy firewood as well. I decided to push further on and camped at Lochandruin. Not sure about the pronunciation there. You do need a permit for this, and I was pleased that wardens came to check permit about 8 o'clock in the evening. It was an idyllic place to stay, but be aware there are no facilities. Good morning all. An interesting night last night. I had booked in at Solochi, which looked very nice actually, but I had a few miles left in me, so I'd also got a permit for the Lochandruin. I'm sure the pronunciation's wrong, but there we are. I decided to stay there. which is a couple of miles on from Solochy. Idyllic campsite, no facilities. Unfortunately, it was also chosen by 3 Scottish lads who weren't walking, but got extremely pissed and created a bit of a nuisance. Luckily there were loads of other people staying there, otherwise I think I might have felt a bit vulnerable. If you are staying there, do make sure you have a permit, because 2 wardens came round and checked the permits about 8 o'clock. So I had a quick meal and then an early night. Didn't sleep very well, but there we are, it's life. Got up at 6:30, packed away and popped into the Rowan Hotel for breakfast. Okay, $13.95 for a serve yourself breakfast, but no proper coffee. Criminal. Just Nescafe and water. So that was a bit poor, and they didn't seem the most helpful people, but they did at least fill my water bottles. So got Loch Lomond just over there, and we're off again. Apparently this is the most difficult stage. Next 8 or 9 miles, quite tough, but once we get to the bit off the loch by Bindglass, should be okay. So just past the Youth Hostel and Bunkhouse, and up to my right is Ben Lomond. Walking all alongside Loch Lomond at the moment. After Rowan, there are 2 routes you can take, the high route and the low route, which follows very closely to the shore of the loch. I decided to take the high route. I'd heard this was slightly easier on the knees, and to be honest, I'd seen an awful lot of the loch anyway, and it was a pleasant route to take. This is the section from where the upper and lower track meet. To Inversnaid, probably about 2 kilometres to Inversnaid. Quite rocky and quite a bit of scrambling. Nice views of Loch Lomond. I think it's going to be more of the same after Inversnaid. That's what we'll see. This is the Inversnaid Hotel. Oh, I'm so hoping they've got some coffee. I'm desperately in need of coffee. Paths up and around. And these are the falls by the Inversnaid Hotel. Rather beautiful. Look at that! And there's the hotel. And the other part of the falls. Wow. The Inversnaid Hotel is a great place to stop for something to drink and something to eat. It's a bit of a scramble getting there, but the section after the Inversnaid Hotel is probably the most taxing section of the whole of the West Highland Way. So it's good to have a sit down before you attempt that and make sure you're ready for what's to come. Some fairly heavy duty scrambling up and down. Paths is not sometimes too obvious, but my advice is look ahead, which I failed to do a couple of times and ended up having to backtrack a little bit, and there it goes on. So quite a challenging bit after Inversnaid Hotel. Some little bits of rock scrambling. About 7.5 miles so far. A bit more scrambling to go, and not too far then to Spyglass campsite, which is where I'm staying tonight. A little bit slow in places. Last mile's taken me 45 minutes. There we are. Glad I bought hiking poles. And that bit probably would have been easier if I wasn't filming and I've been using hiking poles. Still alongside Loch Lomond, which is rather nice, but apparently one of the most polluted lochs in Scotland. And this is a sight for sore eyes. After the last couple of miles, I reckon I was averaging less than a mile an hour. Really tough. Well, not really tough, but quite tough. And quite a lot of scrambling. And apparently it's relatively easy from now to at least Spyglass. After the demanding section from Inversnaid, it was good to turn away from Loch Lomond and move slightly more into the Highlands. The way moves into an easy and pleasant ascent and keeps largely to open ground. As you pass a bothy and a farmhouse, it's a lovely location. Spyglass campsite was a very welcome sight after a relatively hard day. It's a well-equipped campsite. A stagger inn is definitely worth popping into for a pint and a pizza. I certainly had a nice drink and plenty to eat, and then went to bed and had a great night's sleep after a tiring day. Well, good morning all. Day 4 on the West Highland Way. Last night stayed in Beinglass, not quite sure how you say it, but nice campsite, well equipped. Not many showers, but the ones that were lovely and warm. Quite exhausted yesterday, so I put the tent up, had a bit of a lie down and a warm shower, and felt quite a lot better. Had a decent meal in the Stagger Inn, a nice pint, and didn't really do much in the evening. Actually laid down, listened to an audio book, went to bed about 10 and had my best night's sleep for a long time. Slept through till about 6, got up about 6:30, had a nice cooked breakfast, and it's now 8:15. So I'm going to stay in Tindrum tonight, in the campsite just before Tindrum. It's about 12 miles. I'm hoping that the hardest bit is behind me, and I'm also hoping that the rain holds off. Forecast is not bad, and we see some more beautiful scenery. Just stopped at a well situated bench, just where the walk splits up to the northeast. We follow on the West Highland Way, and if you go east you can get to Crianlarich, which is about a mile away. It's beautiful here. Nice weather, slightly overcast, but perfectly right, no rain, and it's lovely and quiet. Just hear the birds and see the occasional walker go past. Just come through the plantation. Left Crianlarich behind, and about 4 miles to Tindrum, I think. Well, this has been delightful. Pretty easy walking. A few ups and downs. That's to be expected. The sun's out. It's really quite warm actually. And about 1.5 miles from Tindrum, I've booked a camping pod tonight, which I'm very excited about. So I'm hoping I can get there quite early. It's only about 1:45 at the moment, so very early, and just relax. Tomorrow's short day, only 9 miles. I'm staying at the Invernaron Hotel, the wild camping just outside the Invernaron Hotel. I must admit the scenery's getting better and better. It was perfectly alright for the first few days, but it's wonderful now. Great hills, looks pretty good, particularly in the nice weather. This was a really beautiful part of the walk, following the River Falach for some time, having the opportunity to branch off to Crianlarich if you wanted to, walking through forest land, and then eventually arriving at Tindrum. I stayed in the By the Way campsite just before Tindrum, which was well placed and well equipped again. Very easy to walk into Tindrum, which has a number of restaurants and some pubs, numerous places to eat, and of course the famous Green Welly stop, which also has a restaurant, which is well worth a visit. Please join me for part 2 of the West Highland Way, where the scenery gets even better. And if you've enjoyed that, you may also want to see my next video, which looks at walking 70 miles on the Hebridean Way. Thank you for watching.